I'm making a face.
Hello, internet. When are you not making a face? Basically never. Is this my good side or my bad side? It's probably my bad side. That's gonna be okay though.
Oh, they're all good sides.
Do you like how I contoured my face? Oh
They're
my
all
god.
good sides.
We can't be funny all the time at
No.
podcasts. We have to actually be serious.
All right, I'll be serious.
All right, so we are going to talk today about functional programming.
Yes, we are.
But an introduction to functional programming. Or like, tell me why I care. Actually, I don't even want to know about functional programming. I want to know about reactive programming, which is why I was asking about functional programming. And I'm confused.
You're confused about
okay,
what?
So like,
You're confused
why,
about functional programming.
Well, why would you care to have a more functional approach to programming versus a more object-oriented approach? Why does that matter? Why do I care?
A lot of it has to do with composition. So composition is just exactly what it sounds like. It's taking parts of a program and putting them together to make other parts of the program, right? So with object-oriented programming, you have these objects that have state in them, and they have methods on them that are functions, but they're methods that are attached to the object that when you call them, know something about how to alter the state of the object. So you have these objects that know how to alter themselves and sometimes how to alter other
So you just don't like it because state's everywhere.
Well, that's part of it. I mean, but you could have state everywhere with functional programming.
What about stateless components?
Well, that's more of a React thing. And those are functional. Technically, they're functions that return. Yeah. So you don't have.
Oh, so it is functional programming. It's just called something different.
So with object-oriented programming, you've kind of inherently tied your functions to your state, and with functional programming, you have functions that just kind of act on state. They're not necessarily tied to state. Any state they have, they've usually closed over with like a closure or something like that.
So does that mean that like, if you're doing functional programming, then so almost like is Redux, if you're using Redux, does that mean you're all of a sudden more functional?
Yeah, in a way. I mean, because you're going to have these reducers, which are, a specialized type of function, and you'll have action creators, which are usually like pure functions that return actions and these things.
So how do I avoid having a more object-oriented approach?
Oh, you don't have to avoid it, but a telltale sign is if you're creating a class and the class has properties on it and then methods on it, it's object-oriented. Usually.
Oh, so like most programming is object-oriented.
Yeah, a good chunk of it. And the reason, there's a good reason for that. It's often easier to reason about object-oriented programming because it kind of helps you organize things. Like people think, oh, I've got a person object and it has a name and an age and these other properties, and then...
And you can have a function to get old.
Yeah, you can...
You're getting old.
Yeah. It's sad, I'm getting old.
I needed that.
But, you like to pick on me. But you could have, a method to feed it and a method to,
Basically, if babies were functions and we could just call functions to feed babies and have them poop, life would be great.
Well, what you would do is you would have like... You'd still have an object, but it'd be like a bit of baby state, right? Mm-hmm. And you'd have like a function called feed that took feedable things, and you would pass a feedable thing, which would be this baby, to
pass other objects
to that function, and it would feed the baby.
I love that. Right? I'm about to pop out a child soon. I mean, the boyfriend doesn't know that, or maybe he does.
Wait, you're pregnant?
No, I'm not pregnant. I'm not that emotional right now. I'm just kidding. No, but seriously, I did my timeline and I was like, dude, I better like pop one out soon.
Oh, so you're planning?
I mean, I literally should get pregnant soon.
Good luck with that.
I thought about this last night.
We're announcing this in the podcast?
No. Although I'm not editing, so it's probably going to go in the podcast. I just thought I'd share that information with you.
Okay.
So, me pregnant, giving talks at conferences, I'm very excited about
That'll be good.
It's going to be fun.
Yeah. There'll be two of you on stage that way.
I know! Double the trouble. Anyways, okay, so back to the exciting stuff. Okay, so we talked about functional programming, but then, like, why reactive programming? Or, like, how does functional programming fit into reactive programming, or reactive programming as functional programming? Oh, my God, there were so many things. True or false? All of them.
You lost me. You said so much stuff there.
Well, okay, so I get the whole idea of functional programming because basically you're going to have, like, more stateless things that just call things, and then wait. So where do you put your state then? If you
You still have state. You just pass it around through your.
So where does your state live in your app?
You would declare it at some top level, or there'd be a function that creates the state inside and then passes it to some other function, and then you like close over it.
Okay.
You still have state. Like there's no way around it. Applications have state.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't have a completely stateless application. Well, you could have a completely stateless application,
stateless.
but there's some state that exists for some period of time to do something. I mean, that's this is it. But so they usually live in like a variable or something that you're passing around.
Okay, so what and why do I care about reactive programming?
I don't know. Maybe you don't.
I care.
You
I
do?
care so
Okay.
much.
So what and why?
This is me caring.
So what is reactive programming? Why do you care about it? So we're getting.
Well, like I mean, I get it. It's more declarative. Okay.
Yeah.
Like
it tends to be more functional. Yeah.
It tends to be more functional, which means, but you just said that like object-oriented approach makes more sense because it gives you a way to manage your application, and then that basically is counterintuitive because it's like, oh, why wouldn't I want that? Because then, like, am I losing that with a more functional approach or what? I mean, am I asking stupid questions?
No, they're hard to answer questions. Like so reactive programming is about setting up bits of an application or bits of a program, really kind of like setting up tiny programs that accept events from somewhere to give them some data, and then they usually do something with it and then emit another event. And so you can do everything in a series of steps where each step doesn't care what produced the thing that is being handed to it.
This is why it's more portable, because you can basically be like, all right, this thing is doing this, but it's like a Lego block.
Yeah, you build a bunch of Lego blocks and kind of put things together. So that's reactive programming is, and it's useful in that regard, and it's useful because events are everywhere in software engineering. It's kind of like everything that happens in an application happened because some event started it, even if that's just the application start.
So what's the crappy non-reactive way?
The crappy non-reactive way is generally just imperative programming, which isn't crappy. It's just different, where everything is kind of coupled together, and you write an app that
like from A to B to C, and it's all chained together.
Right,
like
and it has to know where it's getting things from. Like it has to request things from a particular source in order to get it, as opposed to just getting events sent to it. So it's
more pull-based versus push-based.
Yeah, it's going to be more pull-based. It's going to have more knowledge of what it's getting values from or where it's receiving values from. But
tell me more.
Tell you more.
Tell me more. Tell me more. Like, does he have a car?
Yeah. Did she put up a fight? I don't know. I don't remember all the lyrics to that song.
All you care about is if she put up a fight.
Yeah, I don't know. As long as she
you deal with me, so I'm always putting up a fight.
Yeah, you do.
But does reactive programming put up a fight? I mean, when all these events are being pushed to it, is it like, stop?
No, it doesn't put up a fight that way. It puts up a fight in the way that a lot of us, as you stated earlier, object-oriented programming is everywhere. And most of us spent most of our career doing object-oriented imperative programming. And so very declarative reactive programming that tends to be more functional is left field for some people. It's very different.
I mean, this is almost kind of like when everybody 2 years ago was like, oh my gosh, everything should be component-based. You know, like stick everything into components and like make everything organized with components.
Yeah.
This is kind of like the next level of how you should be thinking about your application or organizing to have like the newest way of application development.
Well, it's when it comes to RxJS, you've got these observables, and observables are very simple primitive tools that you can do a lot with, which is the same thing that could be said for components. So yeah, I think that they get the same level of excitement from some people, but components are more in your face because people have to use them every day and say React. So I think that there's probably like a better understanding for people there. Like people aren't forced into using observables, where they are forced into using React components if they're using React. So I think the understanding is deeper because of that. But you can do more with observables because they're much lower level than what a component is.
When you say lower level, I think about WebAssembly automatically.
It's not that low level. Higher level than that. But yeah,
still in JavaScript.
Yeah, still in JavaScript, but it is definitely lower level.
Get low, get low,
Yes.
get low, get low. Is that a song?
No.
Oh. I said booty to Jay the other day. I was like, booty, booty, booty. And then he started singing me a song.
About Pirate's Treasure?
No, not Pirate's
Because
Booty.
that's also booty.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Pirate's Booty.
Yeah.
It's treasure.
Yeah.
Wait, hold on. Do pirates actually call their treasure booty?
Yeah.
No.
Yar, me booty. Yeah.
Oh, like bounty booty?
No, booty. It's an actual, you can look it up. It's Pirate's Treasure.
Oh, I thought pirates. Oh, that's why it's called Pirate's
There's
Booty.
even a Beastie Boys song that starts off with, "Yo, professor, what's another word for pirate's treasure?" And he says, "Well, I think it's booty."
This is literally the only reason why you know.
Booty.
Because Beastie Boys. Is it Beastie Boys?
No, I knew this before.
No, you didn't.
In my years as a pirate.
That's amazing. Do you like eating pirate's booty?
Oh, like the popcorn things?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are my favorite.
So my kids love that stuff.
Yeah. I didn't listen to the Beastie Boys and learn about what booty was.
Mm.
It's like that one time I was like, oh, pizza my heart is a pun.
I think
It's not just a restaurant.
You know what's really funny? Just today,
Uh-huh.
I was looking at your Twitter handle, Lady Leet, and I was like,
Please tell me you didn't just get that.
just now, I was like, I swear to God,
No.
Lady Lee T. Oh my God, T and Lee, it's Tracy Lee. I finally got that one.
Okay, but you got the Leet like 1337
Yeah.
sooner than you got the Leet Tracy.
Yeah. I got the Lady Lee, and I was like, oh, she's the lead hacker. I get it. It's so sweet. And then just today, I was like, wait, it's Lee with a T.
Yes.
Mind blown.
Well, when somebody told me that,
I
actually,
mean, my mind was so blown. My nose started bleeding. I passed out on the floor. Like
Yeah.
it's crazy.
well, so it was Tom because Tom was like, yeah, so on the West Coast, Tom loves making like East Coast, West Coast things.
Mhm.
And so he's like, okay, on the West Coast, people write their email addresses like T Lee. And then on the East Coast, it's Lee T. And then he's like, Leet. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And then like 10 years ago, that became my Twitter handle. Or 8 years ago, however long I've been on Twitter.
It's pretty sweet. I thought maybe you used to be like a Counter-Strike gamer or something like that.
So, like, when they say that Angular has, like, embraced reactive programming, then, I mean, they've embraced RxJS, which basically means they've embraced reactive programming, right?
Yeah.
But, like, how and why have they done that? Like, is that because, like, you're just taught to manage state using NGRX? Like, why is...
Well, the how, I mean, the how is probably the why, right? So the how is single page apps make a lot of AJAX requests, like a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's AJAX primitive, whenever Angular 2 was being developed, was developed on top of promises, which have no cancellation.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem is, in a single page app, if you are going between different routes and you don't care about the data, if it's still in flight, the request, you don't care about the data because you moved to a different route, you need to be able to abort that and stop handling the requests and stop, parsing JSON and getting garbage collection, all these other things. And so the Angular team was convinced to use observable instead of promise for this because it's a slightly better primitive for the cancellation use case because there's no cancellation.
So it's literally just because they want to cancel AJAX requests.
Yeah. And then what happens is observable is so flexible that you can use it for a variety of other things. You can do more than one callback on it. You can do all sorts of other interesting things. And so people started using observable with Angular in this interesting way. And then they added pipe async, which made it even more compelling to use
which is
observables.
Basically subscribing and unsubscribing when it initializes or gets removed from the view.
Right.
Yeah.
And then after that, more and more people that are central to Angular and central to the Angular community got more and more excited about reactive programming, and I think that's kind of why it took off.
Okay, but like, isn't reactive programming anyway,
Yeah, kind of.
but
Yeah.
not as much.
I mean, it is like, so React, you've got, I mean, you kind of, every time you set state, it reacts to you setting state by rendering again. So there's like some semblance of reactive programming in there, but it's not quite the same. Like, it reacts to things and therefore is reactive programming, but it's not what most people would think of when you say reactive programming.
What are some sort of like best ways to think about your applications so that you can make sure you are practicing reactive programming? Like, what are some do nots?
Do nots.
Just don't do it.
Do nots are harder than the do's. Like, do think of all of your events. Do try to consider that every variable you have changes over time. It's not.
And
just
this is by the way, this is not just RX. This is like reactive programming in general.
Right.
Okay, so like your variables change over time, but what does that mean? Like, what do I need to do within my code to like make sure that I'm not? I guess because like if your thing changes over time, then like it would be more of an imperative way to chain together things, right? Because you're like sort of following the state of that variable. If you're doing it imperatively, is that right?
If you're doing things imperatively, then like I guess that you're kind of taking, instead of taking things in individual steps that don't know about what the previous source is, you've got everything in one big kind of monolith that has to know everything about like what's happening next. Right. So you don't have like this event happens and then I'm going to filter all those events and then do this next thing. You've got like an if block where it's like this happened and then if this, then execute all of this other stuff. Otherwise, execute all of this other stuff. And what people don't realize is that like that if else, the second clause of that has some knowledge of what the first half of it would be. We're losing our light there. It has some knowledge of what the first half of that would be because by virtue of the fact that it starts with else, which means that there's some knowledge of what if had underneath it, right? So there's like everything's kind of tied together or glued together in some way when it comes to that, as opposed to having these smaller building blocks to kind of put things together. So if you wanted things to be...
Well, okay, so like instead of an if-else statement that like, let's say a variable is going through, then what would the reactive way to build the thing be?
You would look at, okay, what calls this function, my imperative function, what would normally call it? How about if I get an observable of those events? And then I map that to some value or whatever, and then after that I filter it on the same exact predicate that you would normally be using inside of your if. So if you're saying if x is greater than 30, then you need an observable of x, and then you filter it by whether or not it's greater than 30. And if it passes that filter, then you execute the next step.
So why is that better?
Because you can change things around much easier. You can take little bits and pieces. If you want to debounce it, you can.
If you're like, oh, let me just change the value to 5 instead of 30 or something like that, you can do that.
Yeah, you just switch out the filter for a different filter. But that's probably not the better. The better example would be like, oh, well, there's 5 different parts of my code where I care about x being greater than 30. Now they can all just use the same observable instead of me having to repeat that.
Oh, instead of having to like write the same functions over and over and over again. Yeah. So you're almost like componentizing your functions.
Basically.
Oh, that's exciting.
One interesting thing about observables are just functions. You know, I always say that, like you subscribe to them to make a function. So
no.
When you don't know that.
I do. Of course I do. I say that.
So if you have to subscribe to an observable to make it do anything, just like you have to call a function to make it do anything,
right.
Then when you're saying observable, map, filter, reduce, yada, 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 each one of those steps returns a new observable, which means, in essence, what you're doing when you're doing that is you're actually building a function at runtime. Like instead of writing a function like all as code,
right.
you are at runtime building a function from individual pieces, which is, I mean, if you think about it, is a lot more powerful. That's one of the things that people like.
So where would that even live, though? Like, it doesn't live inside my component. Does it?
It could live anywhere. It's a primitive. It's very primitive.
Well, okay, so like, because if we're mapping and filtering, it's basically just an operator. So it's not like we have to like create those functions to do that. It just comes with RxJS, basically. So it's not like we have to like be like, but okay, if I was creating custom operators, then where would I create my custom operators? Because I wouldn't want them just living in random components, right?
Yeah. If you're going to create custom operators, you might just stick them in a different file somewhere, like a different module.
Like custom components.ts or JS.
Yeah, whatever you like.
I like it. So what are the like most important things people need to know about functional programming?
About functional programming?
Or sorry, reactive programming.
It's
the same thing.
No, it's not the same thing.
It's totally the same thing.
No,
man.
it's not. Stop it. You're trying to trigger me. You're suspect.
It's working though.
Yeah. The most important thing to remember about functional or reactive programming, see, you almost got me, is that, again, observables are just functions, and you're building out these functions.
Yeah.
About React, that's more about RxJS, though. Like, reactive programming is about publishing events and subscribing to events. Like, that's reactive programming.
Reactive
And
programming is
doesn't
about
necessarily mean
publishing
RxJS.
events and subscribing to events.
So it's like everything that could be a variable, you make some sort of event stream from that. And then anything that wants that variable would subscribe to that event stream.
Is all reactive programming stream-based?
Not necessarily. It's always either push. It could be pull-based.
I love you and Jay because you're always like, well, actually.
Yeah, it's really like terms like functional programming. Well, functional programming is a little bit more well-defined, but terms like reactive programming are so amorphous that it's really, really hard to, because there's like functional reactive programming, which is this like very specific, like there's a whole document on what it exactly is, and it has this idea of discrete time and all this other stuff.
I mean, are you...
And then there's reactive programming, which is
like
RxJS.
RxJS functional reactive programming?
It's reactive programming. It involves functions. Everyone calls it functional reactive programming. More people call it functional reactive programming than people call the original functional reactive programming that. So it's kind of one of those things where
it's like, is it a lettable operator or is it a pipeable operator?
Is it facial tissue or is it Kleenex? It's kind of what's happened to the term functional reactive programming.
We've bastardized.
Yeah, kind of. So it is reactive programming. It's push-based reactive programming for sure.
Can you explain your shirt?
Oh, it's
like basically you should never put an any on it.
Dude, no, just there's a bird.
Well, I don't get the bird.
Well, it was a bird, but now it could be anything. Let's put an any on it.
That doesn't make any sense.
Do you ever watch Portlandia?
No.
Okay, that's your problem.
Why.
That's why.
Okay.
There's a skit called "Put a Bird on It," and like they're doing art because they're artists that live in Portland. Artists, and their whole art.
Are you an artist?
They go around and I was.
Oh, hey, you know what I should make you do?
What?
Okay, so I'm gonna next time I'm gonna get my eyeshadow, and then I'm gonna show you an Instagram video.
I'm gonna put on eyeshadow.
Yes. Well, I'm gonna show you an Instagram video of how people do eyeshadow.
Okay.
And then you can draw eyeshadow on me.
Oh, not on me though, on you.
No, because it's all about shading and all these other things, which like I'm like,
I already have bags on my eyes. Look.
It's true.
Yeah, it's true.
Yes.
You make me tired. That's why.
Because I'm asking you questions about functional reactive programming and making you record a podcast. Do you want to say anything else, Ben?
Put an any on it.
What are your socks?
Oh, I wore these for Sebastian.
Oh, native script socks.
Yeah, Sebastian.
Oh my god, they totally match. Here, show them your socks because it matches your.
Look,
but they match. Did you do that on purpose?
Yeah, of course.
But I don't like those socks.
Yeah, I mean, I have the other ones too. The other ones that are like Argyle or whatever.
But you know what? Those socks actually look better in person. Like when they're on, because they're supposed to be mustaches, right?
Yeah.
But like, I don't know. I don't really like the mustaches. But I don't know. For some reason,
when
they
they're
look
all
really
stretched out. They look more like seagulls.
Yeah. So basically, native script or seagull socks.
Yeah, seagull socks.
I want native script seagulls.
I'll take these off. You can have them right now.
Yeah.
I got some in my gym bag, maybe.
I think I'm done asking questions.
Are you?
Yes.
Can I ask questions?
Sure. You can ask one question.
One?
Mm.
Only one.
I can't believe I said that I wanted babies on this podcast.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
It's on the top of my mind, though. But I shouldn't rush it. Like, I should get married and stuff.
Yeah.
right?
At least you traveled a bit. It's harder to travel once you have kids.
I'm traveling with a child.
Yeah, it's harder.
I can't take red eyes.
Twice as expensive.
Not when they're little.
Until they're 2.
Yeah.
Trust me, by the time they're 2, you're going to want another seat.
You're like 3, you're like 3 hours.
You're not going to want to like sit for like a plane flight to Europe with a kid in your lap.
No, just let the child run around.
You're not going to be able to do that either. It's not a thing.
Okay, ask me a question, Ben.
Let the kid run around.
Be a nice dad. Let your child run around.
No.
Let them poop all over the floor.
That's my job. I do that.
Pooping? Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, you have seagull socks.
All right.
Poop
So, all right, Tracy. You're more in tune to the entire web development community than I am, I think.
No.
I'm very into a very small set of it, I think. But you've got more visibility. You're more well known. You're definitely more famous. You're definitely more well known than I am. So
I don't have a library that has like a bajillion downloads.
What is the hot new thing in web development these days? What is the must learn thing for all the kids out there? It's just gonna take over, do you think?
I don't know. I mean, I'm really actually kind of curious after this.
You're getting off frame. Here.
Right.
We're just gonna move you.
I'm actually kind of curious what these statistics are going to be for the Vue adoption. So I last year at this time I was like, Vue, that's cute. We should learn it. And then like 6 months later, I was like, whoa, we should really learn Vue now. Like companies are actually adopting it. They're, they have it in production. It's like super interesting that people are doing that. And then like I'm actually really curious if like, but then I also haven't seen the level of adoption that I would expect. So I'm seeing it, but I'm not seeing it like,
I feel like
React.
I feel like React. I feel like if it had come a little sooner, it might have eaten React's lunch.
Well,
like, that's what I feel like. But I feel like right now React's so popular. There's not a lot of compelling reason for people to switch off of React.
And after React's MIT.
Yeah.
Situation.
Fix that.
But I have to say that like Vue was like so easy to learn. So Chris Fritz on the core team taught me Vue, and I was just like, oh, that's it? That's awesome. Right? So I don't know. I mean, I think I'm really big on this whole idea of like reactive programming right now. Right? I really want to do that.
Vue has an RX library that they support too.
I know, that's our next parent session.
That'll be good. I'm excited. I've never used Vue. I've never used it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm really excited about the AR, VR stuff. Like, I think there's a lot of exciting stuff there. Jay's so funny because, like, I was super hyped up about WebAssembly, and I still am super hyped up about WebAssembly, but I'm, like, hyped up in different ways.
Yeah.
So now I'm not as hyped up to be like, oh my gosh, I need to learn.
I feel like WebAssembly is one of those things that'll be like, that'll be really cool someday. Like it's like one of those things that's it's like it'll be really cool right now. It's kind of cool right now just because of what it is and because I know what it is, and that makes it exciting. But it's not like I can't go out and be like, oh, I built an entire web app in whatever and compile it with WebAssembly unless I'm doing something very kind of graphics heavy or. No,
you can totally do that. You can do that right now. It's actually really easy if you have like, a C or a C++ application because like typically speaking, you have some abstraction layer anyways because you're trying to make it work on desktop and mobile.
Right.
And so like in terms of being able to like refactor a little bit and then compile it to WebAssembly, it's
right.
There's not that much.
I feel like it's non-trivial though to be like, oh, I'm doing this in manipulating HTML. Like, I feel like it's more like I'm doing this in rendering to canvas sort of thing.
Well, I think the reason why I don't necessarily care as a JavaScript developer is because, like, well, I mean, so some people say, like, oh, it's not going to, like, WebAssembly is not going to compile, or sorry, JavaScript's never going to compile to WebAssembly. I mean, who knows, right? But, like, that's what some people say. And, like, I'm not writing C or C++ or, like, Rust or, like, whatever other languages. And so I don't really need to know what WebAssembly does. And I'm also not building a framework, so I'm not, like, ooh, the internals of this framework I'm building are going to like
Run
be
on Web.
faster
Yeah.
because WebAssembly.
So like I would love to be able to get RxJS to run with WebAssembly because then I could get real concurrency in some of the like actual threading and stuff.
Right.
But like right now, it would really only be good for like observables of numbers or
Oh my
things like
God.
that. Yeah.
Why have you not told Jay you want that?
Oh, Jay knows.
Oh, why hasn't Jay done it?
Because right now it's not really possible to have
Garbage collection?
WebAssembly. Well, no, it's WebAssembly like transfer around JavaScript objects. Like it can't really do that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And so that kind of shoots the whole plan in the foot for a lot of things. Actually, that's a really big problem for like the interop between like a HTML-y sort of web app and WebAssembly.
Because of the objects? Or
Yeah, but like you could use WebAssembly to do some super awesome fast calculation of like numeric values or whatever. But
yeah. Well, anyways, that was a fun
things.
little tangent.
Yeah.
That was your one question.
That's my one. I only get one.
Yeah, because we're
How
going
many
to say
questions
bye
have you
now.
asked me, and I only get to ask you one?
I know, but I have hard questions.
You're so mysterious.
I have very snipey questions. I'm not that mysterious.
You're
I'm on the
very
internet.
mysterious.
If you watched me on the internet,
Look mysterious.
you would know.
Look.
I can't look mysterious. I don't know how.
You're suspect. You look
All
suspicious.
I see are the wrinkles under your eyes.
You don't. That's so mean. You're ageist. Yep. Okay.
Anyway, so you can follow me on Twitter at Lady Leet, also known as Lee Tracy, Lee T, or 1337, Lady Leet, Leet. I mean, your Twitter handle doesn't really need much explanation. At Lesh.
_ J Phelps.
Yeah. Which, by the way, this podcast was because I was like, Ben, we have a meetup tonight. I'm coming early, okay? And then I pulled Ben into a room, and then all of a sudden he's doing a podcast with me.
Can J Phelps officially sponsor this podcast?
Yes, J Phelps is officially sponsoring this podcast.
Sponsored by J Phelps.
If you want to hire him for anything related to WebAssembly, he will literally drop everything. And if you're just like, Jay, work on WebAssembly, you can hire him. Like tomorrow.
Right.
I come with a package. I can be part of his total comp package. You have to deal with Tracy for 4 hours.
Yeah.
And we'll actually
deal
with her. Well, actually.
Why is this not lighting up?
Dude, you need to tan your arms.
I do. They're pretty pale. Fail. Maybe the hat. Maybe the hat.
No. Anyways, everybody, or you can find more podcasts at modern.web.
It's already dimming.
Modern.web.com. Wait, modern.web.com? That's true. You can book this room again. Do you want to say anything else before we go? Besides follow J Phelps at _ J Phelps on Twitter?
Yes. I want to say follow J Phelps.
Right.
_ J Phelps.
Bye, everyone.